Hello, everybody, and welcome back for part 3 of the Golden Age amusement parks and inventoriums. Today, we're going to be looking at some of the common rides that were associated with these parks and just questioning might they be misdescribing the function of some of these rides. But before I do that, I just wanted to recap the first 2 episodes. So at the turn of the century, 1900 to roughly 1915, according to the narrative, you had upwards of 2,000 amusement parks that were built at the end of trolley park lines, at the end of these streetcar lines. And a lot of them were called trolley parks. Now, the official reason as to why these parks were built is that these trolley companies who owned the streetcar lines wanted people who didn't have vehicles, typically until 1920s. They wanted to have people use their streetcar lines during the weekends. So that's why there was this massive spree of these parks being built. And again, this is the official narrative. And what you're looking at in the background, this is Luna Park in Coney Island at night, and on the right is during the daytime. Thousands and thousands of lights were associated with these amusement parks, not to mention highly decorative and ornamental, and just a lot going on in these parks. Now, they went by many names. The electric companies, they, according to the narrative, again, they owned a lot of the streetcar lines as well. So we're told they built their own amusement parks at the end of a lot of streetcar lines, and they called them electric parks. This is Fort Smith, Arkansas. A lot of Moorish architecture, a lot of domes. Now, and you had a lot of symbology, like I said, associated with these parks. So just has me thinking there's more to these parks than the official narrative would have us believe. Now, in the second episode, I talked about a lot of these parks, regardless of the name of them, and whether or not the electric company or the trolley companies own them, or if they were privately owned, they pretty much all had this ride called the chutes, which would have a lagoon at the end of it. There would be an electric tower, which would be typically between 100 to 150 feet tall. A lot of times it would be at the end of the lagoon, but here it's off to the side, and you would have this circle swing with an octagon. These components they show up quite often, regardless again of name, owner. But yeah, so that covers that. And in the first episode, another thing that happens a lot is fires. I think I talked about in the first episode, there was a White City amusement park in Indianapolis I talked about. Now this is a different White City amusement park. This is the one here in Cleveland. And again, same story, established in 1900. Fire destroyed the grounds in May 1906 and closed. So a lot of these parks, really short lifespan, lots of fire. Now, at the end of part 2, also introduced this concept of infantoriums, which were hospital-like facilities filled with incubators, which were new technology in the late 1800s and early 1900s, containing tiny babies who were born prematurely. So this was an exhibit that people would pay money to go and see these prematurely born babies. And the numbers, according to the narrative, there were among 80,000 premature infants who were treated in these amusement park and fairs at these infantoriums in Europe and the United States between 1896 and 1944. So this technology was introduced in these parks. Now, they admit that of this 80,000, there was a percentage that were foundlings, meaning they were given up by their parents. And since the records aren't forthcoming, we'll never know what percentage of this 80,000 were foundlings. And this was the head of the person who apparently was responsible for getting the incubators, the technology, and the exhibits into the amusement parks was this individual, Dr. Martin Cooney. Somebody did some research and they found out that he's not even a real doctor. So that was just another layer to the story. But speaking of this White City amusement park in Cleveland, it also had one of these infantoriums, and somebody sent me a link to a photo that, for some reason, I find it a little disturbing. So looking at this photograph a bit closer, it says Marie Dressler and her adopted incubator baby from that White City amusement park in Cleveland. Now, it turns out she is an actress. And just looking at this, I just had to do a little bit of digging. And don't worry, we're going to return to the topic of amusement parks, but it is sort of related to the infantoriums. And turns out she was born in Ontario, Canada, but married. She kind of rose up during the silent film and Depression era as far as her acting career, and she married an American, so she was a dual citizen. Now, there were rumors that she had a daughter who died as a small child, but this has not been confirmed. But when I started looking at images of her as a younger woman, she made her Broadway debut in 1892, and her first starring role came in The Lady Slavey, 1896. I think that kind of just says it all. And here she is in 1914 with Charlie Chaplin. And another shot. Her movie debut came in 1914 at age 44. So just another turn to this infantorium aspect of these amusement parks that's not making me feel any better about the situation. But enough of that. Let's look into some of these rides and dig a bit deeper. Now, we're going to look at a couple of rides that are pretty common to a lot of these Golden Age amusement parks. And keep in mind, we are speculating here and we're asking questions and trying to dig a bit deeper. So the first of these rides we're going to look at is the Circle Swing, which was claimed to be, according to this advertisement anyway, the greatest amusement device of the century. It's just basically, I think it might have been about a 40-foot tower with these cars suspended from it. Now, this person who developed this technology, and this inventor and engineer, his name was Harry Guy Traver. So it was called the Traver Circle Swing, but he took out this patent in 1904. Now, you will see these circle swings in, I believe this is Luna Park, but they are in pretty much almost every one of them. A lot of them have the antenna at the top, and I think there is a cord running from that. But they share the basic same design, and I'm just wondering, could this have been some type of communications tower at one point, or something other than just a circle swing? This is the Electric Park. I believe this is in Galveston, Texas. I believe this is a White City amusement park in Worcester, Massachusetts. You can see here it is, the circle swing, the White City amusement park. Yeah, Worcester. Hopefully I said that right. But here is the circle swing. This is Rhode Island, Rocky Point, Rhode Island. This is an electric park in Kansas City. So very, very common to see them. This is a Wonderland at Wonderland Park in Milwaukee, and one more here in Bayonne, Melville Park, I believe it's called, in Bayonne, New Jersey. So, and you also had these circle swings, a variation called the sea swing, which was the exact same thing, just in water. And I believe this would be at Cedar Point, Sandusky, Ohio. But getting back to the circle swings, this is the first park that started making me think there could be something more to these circle swings. Now, these parks, again, are usually always right next to a river or right close to the ocean in the case of the East Coast or West Coast. Looking at this particular circle swing, I mean, it almost looks like a dish, like a satellite dish of sorts. Now, it's right next to the carousel, which is essentially, it's a spinning wheel. And with a spinning wheel, you can do a lot of things. Now, this is the same park, but you just have, it's not colorized, obviously. Now, this carousel, nice big antenna on the top of this thing. So you've got this circle swing, which appears to almost look like a communications tower of sorts, right next to the carousel, which has a nice big antenna on it. Just another photograph here, or an image of the circle swing. And it's just, I don't know, something about it just tells me there's more going on with these swings. Now, looking at, this is Al Fresco Park in Peoria, Illinois. Something else I began to notice with a lot of these circle swings, but not all, but some of them, the base that they're sitting on appears to be an octagon. Now, I've done a whole video called Bandstands and Octagons, and this shape, it pops up a lot, the octagon, especially with the bandstands, but I noticed these circle swings would be in these octagons as well, and I thought that was very interesting. So I started looking around and I found some more. Now, this is another circle swing in an electric park. I think this is in San Antonio, Texas. And again, this is the base of it is an octagon, 8-sided. Now, here's also a bandstand that appears to be 8-sided with an antenna on it. And there's this park I featured in episode 1 of this series called Celeron Park. Now, here's a circle swing in the middle of the water here, and it's sitting on an octagonal base. Here is that same swing, black and white, untouched photograph, as far as it's obviously not colorized. But where I'm going with this is why I make a big deal out of this octagonal shape. The military has this directed energy, I guess, weapon. It's called the active denial system, and it focuses a wave which penetrates the skin 1/64th of an inch, so not even an inch, and it gives off these 2-second bursts. But if you look at it now, the sides aren't equal, but it's an octagon, the shape. Now, if the military has found a practical use for this shape, then obviously there's a function behind it. They wouldn't just frivolously use that shape. So you have a tower sitting in the middle of an octagon. You have the military using these active denial systems, and it's an octagon. And I don't know. I really don't know, but there's got to be something to it. Now, some of these parks, the electric swings have these circular components attached to them. Now, this is where was this here? This one's in Kansas City, an electric park. This one's in a park called Hanlan's Point in Toronto. Again, very similar. This is a Luna Park, I believe, in Scranton, Pennsylvania. You can't see the bottom of this, but here's the top of the circle swing. Now, what that reminded me of is, I think it was in the last episode, I was talking about these circular cages or whatever they are with the antennas sticking out of them. This one's Melville Park in Bayonne, New Jersey. And we were also kind of looking, and this was an electric park. I think this is the one again in Kansas City. But you have this similar thing here. And I'm just wondering, is there an actual function to this? And we were looking at some of these ships that didn't appear to be steam powered or didn't have sails on them for means of propulsion, but they had this cage or whatever it is at the top with an antenna, and there's a cable or cord that runs between them. It's just kind of interesting. But I found another park. This would be the Wonderland Park in Revere Beach in Massachusetts. And again, it has these, I don't even know what to call them, but this component on top of an octagonal structure. And I was doing a little bit of digging, and there's a place called the Hippodrome in New York. And I think they give us the date of construction for this as being 1905. But again, you have this circular structure on top of an octagonal structure, and here, it's not octagonal here, but you have this really elaborate setup on the top of the Hippodrome. And again, this is New York, and I just wanted to point out here, you got a level here that goes down, and I just wanted to, this is a nice, we can get a little bit of magnification on this, but just take a look at this. How crazy is this? And, we just throw a flag on it, and there's all these antenna, and again, just put a flag on it, and that's it. But I don't know. There might be more to this. And I just wanted to, I found that interesting. But again, back to the circle swing. This is what's left of the circle swing. I think this is Rocky Point, Rhode Island. And you can see if you strip it of all of its accessories, it's just about a 40-foot tower. So again, speculative. There's some interesting aspects to these circle swings, and I think it requires some more research. But I think with regards to these circle swings, I'm going to leave it here for now. But let's take a look at the second ride of interest. The last ride I'd like to look at today briefly here is a ride called the Human Roulette Wheel. Now, this Human Roulette Wheel was located at the Wonderland Amusement Park in Revere Beach, Massachusetts, in an area called the Pit, and I believe this is just where Revere Beach is. Now, this ride in question, I remember just looking at this and just thinking, man, is this even the initial? I mean, is it that poorly designed? Like, the people who are responsible for all this, did they come up with a ride where the wooden support beams are less than like 10 feet away from the actual top of this ride, where people are going to get flung out, and it looks like they just threw some padding around these support beams. And it goes by many names. The human roulette wheel, the wheel of fortune, the devil's wheel. But you could see here, these people are sliding off. And here are your support beams with just some minimal padding. But they go on to say here, basically a large spinning wheel that would begin to shoot its patrons outwards towards the wooden walls and support columns. While there was padding, allegedly, governor's son died on this ride. Yeah, no kidding. I mean, look at this. Again, I would just chalk this up to, okay, they just don't know how to design a ride. But when you look at these parks and all of the engineering and design that go into them, did they just drop the ball, or is this something else? Now, the human roulette wheel showed up in other parks as well, on Coney Island. Here's a couple depictions. Now, I don't think I'm not going to say that this is exactly what's going on, but when you have a hydraulic turbine, and of course it takes advantage of water flowing, which helps in turn to actually generate energy, mechanical energy, right? But you've got, sitting on top of the turbine, you have this component, and I don't know the name of it, but it's shaped like this, and you've got something kind of similar. And again, this is just to kind of give you a frame of reference of something that could be in the ballpark of what might be happening. But I think this is some sort of a machine it had a different purpose, and this is just kind of one idea. But this is Luna Park in Cleveland, and to the right you have another human roulette wheel. Here's the lagoon, and there's always plenty of water. With that Revere Beach, there's the ocean was right there, and this is just a different angle. This is that same Luna Park in Cleveland that we were just looking at. But again, so you got this spinning wheel basically shaped in that interesting way, and this building is an octagon, and just again, potential. And now that's kind of all I had for that, but there's another slow moving spinning wheel surrounded by water, and this, I'm going to say ride in quotations. This ride is called the Rotary Boat, and this belongs to a place called Woodward's Gardens, which is in San Francisco. And before we go into before we talk about this Rotary Boat, I really want to just introduce you to this park real quickly, because this place is just so out of place. Now, Woodward Gardens, it was, I believe, opened in 1865, and it closed its doors in 1891. So it's a precursor to all these, this golden age amusement parks. But this was a combination of amusement park, or so we're told, amusement park, zoo, and museum. But it's got just some crazy architecture associated with it. But yeah, here we go. Operating, from 1866 to 1891. Combination amusement park, museum, art gallery, zoo. Oh, I'm sorry, I left out a couple of things. Aquarium. Here's that entrance. And what else do we got? Now, this was at the end of, since the electrification of all of the streetcar lines hadn't happened really until the 1890s. They were all horse car powered, right? You had horses pulling all these trolleys. So It was at the end of a horse car line. But here's that museum. This was the entrance we were looking at. And we're going to just take a look at some of this stuff. It just so had a place. Now here's just another side entrance. There's conservatories, Moorish architecture. Let me zoom out here a bit. This is that museum when you walk in through the main gates, and plenty of art associated with it. A lot of when the park ends up closing in 1891, all of this stuff goes up for auction, and the person who owns the Sutro Baths, we're told he ends up buying a lot of this stuff, including an organ, a pipe organ. But this is the best layout I could find. Unfortunately, it's a drawing, but just to give you a sense of it. Now, this park, this Woodward's Gardens, it took up 2 city blocks. You had primarily your zoo here on the left. Now, this is that rotary boat we're going to come back to, a spinning wheel, but you had this, and there's an impressive structure right here we're going to look at. And here's the horse car, here's the main entrance here, and you had that museum, there's a conservatory. But yeah, this place just really a lot going on, and it held the largest and most comprehensive zoo on the West Coast at the time, and it operated the first aquarium ever in America's West, which opened. So the aquarium opened in 1873. So when you start looking at some of these buildings, it's got this very Moorish architecture to it. And I just kind of wanted to show you guys antenna everywhere. You got the crescent moon. Some interesting designs on the building. There's another gazebo, bandstand, music stand, octagonal. And when you come down these stairs, here's that rotary boat that it's claimed to be just an amusement ride. You actually have to power it with oars, but they got these little sails up, so I'm going to question that. But just some more photos of this. Here's, and I think this is a different area of that little gardens, but more of the Moorish architecture. And these are seals. So again, it was part zoo. I think this is like a conservatory in the background. Here's a close-up of one of the conservatories. Just super impressive. And you got all these antennas, and again, it's got this zoo, and just really, really pretty wild. And so, yeah, so it had this rotary boat, and I'm just wondering, maybe this was part of some larger mechanism, but in its current evolution here, people would just sit in here and put rows in and just row themselves in a circle really slowly. Now, again, you have flowing water, and obviously this part wouldn't be on, but you got these little, what are they called, wicket gates. And again, I don't know, it's a reach, but could there be a different function for it? I think there might be. This whole place is just so out of place to me, and I really wanted to talk about it for a while, but I couldn't fit it in. So this is kind of loosely, this rotary boat ride, I think loosely ties into what we're talking about. But that's it. That's all I got for today. And I think this will probably be the end of the series because there's more research that needs to be done. But I don't have really, we just got more and more questions at this point, but hopefully we'll get some answers. So I'll leave it here for now, but until next time, take care. Bye.
Reserve some for the foundlings.
As it should always be. The foundlings are the future. This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way.